folks, and welcome to Subjective Thoughts. And our manga for today is Fullmetal Alchemist 3-in-1, Volume 1 by Hiromu Arakawa, published by Viz. Now there is fighting, violence, blood, killing, murder, alchemy, weird shit, and fucked up shit in this one. So if you are in any way squeamish, you have been warned. Also, spoilers. Alright, here's the translator and adapter. I always forget to mention that there's sometimes an adapter. Excuse me. And of course, the story and art are by Hiromu Arakawa. My apologies if I butchered her name. I feel like I at least butchered her first name. Anyway, I'm sure quite a lot of you know about Fullmetal Alchemist. It is a very popular story, I would say. I've known about it for years before I picked up the manga, which is also why I'm kind of spoiled for the story as well, because I've seen bits of the anime here and there, but still, I picked this one up from Book Depository when it was still around, the 3-in-1. Actually started reading in the beginning of the year, then for some reason dropped it, but now I finished it. So this has, like I said, the first, second, and third volumes. It's the Somnibus edition. Just on one hand, quite convenient, to be fair, if you just want to read through it. Okay, so the story of the Fullmetal Alchemist, which is this young lad here. This is Edward Elric. He is a state alchemist. He works for the government. And that's his brother, Alphason Elric. He is the Fullmetal Alchemist because he has these two prosthetic limbs. Again, I've kind of wondered how I'm going to describe this one, because a lot happens, and I'm not going to be able... Basically, in the world of the Fullmetal Alchemist, I think it's, I would say, the era of the 1900s, because they do have phones, they have trains, not cell phones, but, you know, like land phones. But old-fashioned style ones. But they have some slight differences. And in this world, there are alchemists. And there are many alchemists who work for the government. They're called the dogs of the government. They have a license, but a lot of people can practice alchemy. Just without the license and working for the military. And there's also been this, I'm not sure what area they're in. They're somewhere in Europe, and there's been this war during which a lot of people from this one region were killed. And, well, basically, the Great War, a lot of people lost their lives, but also, not that many, but many survived, and now... for instance, Edward, he goes to this old lady, granny, who grew up in this village, and she makes prosthetic limbs for people who have lost theirs in the war. So the story focuses, so that's basically the world here. There's many alchemists and all that stuff. So the story focuses on Edward and Alphason Elric. 4 years prior to these events, and now I should describe their home life. So they had a mom, they had a dad, and apparently in this, the dad just got up and left for some reason. It's not yet explained here why. And then the boys were left with their mom. They're a year apart. Edward's now 15, and Alphason's 14. And for whatever reason, their mother died. It wasn't explained if she got sick or what happened. But both of them were alchemists. They studied alchemy. I think their father knew alchemy. And they tried to bring her back but whatever ritual they tried, things got really fucked up. Whatever they brought back, that was not their mother. And because of this, Edward lost his leg, and Alphason lost his whole body, because the rule with alchemy is equivalent exchange in this world, so you have to exchange something for something else, basically. Now, Edward was 11 at the time. He realized what happened after he woke up and saw, whatever it was that wasn't his mother anymore, and that Alphason was gone. So then Edward sacrificed his, what would it be, right arm, in order to bring back Alphason's soul. That's the only thing he could bring back. And then he bound it to this armor. Alphason, his soul is bound to this armor. So since then, that after what happened, Alphason brought him to Granny. Their friend, what's her name? Vinery. That's our best friend, Vinery. That's her grandmother. They all grew up together. They brought her, and Edward, there's like regular prosthetic limbs, and then there are prosthetic limbs that are connected to your nerve endings. I'm not sure how that works in this world, but yeah, Edward got an arm and a leg like that, so he can basically go around, so he can become a state alchemist, so he would have the funds and ability to go and search for this thing called the Philosopher's Stone, so he can give himself back his limbs and his brother his body back. And so for 4 years that Edward's been training, learning, he's a very brilliant alchemist. I think so is Alphason, but Alphason can't perform alchemy. But it does help Edward a lot. And so we followed them around as they basically wander from place to place. The first adventure in this manga is in some mining town where Edward ends up helping the people because they have some military guy there that's making their life hell. And also, among all this, we have these mysterious people named after sins who, they clearly want something. They will go around. We meet the first two, which are gluttony and lust. There's this attractive lady and this short, chubby guy. And what was that? And they seem to be also following after Edward. And it turns out that they need him alive because they want they want this to make this ritual, make a Philosopher's Stone. Now along the way, Edward fights this Ishablam guy. His name is Scar. He was from those people I mentioned that were almost all extinct from that war. And he goes around and is killing state alchemists specifically. They discover him when he goes and kills an alchemist that Edward visits because he wants to read his notes. They're looking all over it too so they can make the Philosopher's Stone. Now this guy makes chimeras and he has no regard for human life because a year prior he turned his wife into a chimera. That poor woman. He basically combined her, I think, with a dog or something, and she understood what happened to her, and she refused to eat and she died. And then in here he does this, he has a little girl, and he does that with her and the family dog. You can imagine the horror when Edward and Alphason realize that. Well, basically, Scar gives him his divine punishment. But the irony is that he kills alchemists, but he uses alchemy to do that. Even though he said that God sent him to, purify them of alchemists. But again, the weird thing with him is that he specifically goes after state alchemists. As I said, there's a lot of alchemists around, just not all with the state. So what's going on? Well, after the fight with him, Edward's arm gets broken. Scar uses this alchemy ability where I guess he shoots force into you and then you explode from the inside, but not in flames. You just there's a power explosion in you and you burst basically like a sausage in a bag that's too small. And so he has to go back to Granny so she'll fix his arm. And here we learn that after they became a state alchemist, they burned down their house, Edward and Alphason, and then they left. They have a Major Armstrong that goes with them to guard Edward from Scar. Oh no, so there's that Roy Mustang alchemist. He's a flame alchemist. I've seen him in a lot of also clips over the years. Anyway, as they go to Granny, they go on a train stop, and General Armstrong notices a man that he knew. He was a state alchemist, and they end up leaving the train to follow him. Unfortunately, Lust is following them, so she also finds out. His name is Monach or something, and he actually created a philosopher's stone. He lives in this tiny village and he heals people with it. The stone looks more like a little liquid in a bottle, and of course Edward and Alphason are elated. Are we finally close to reaching our goal? But then it turns out that this philosopher, the doctor, refuses to give them his notes. Years ago, after the war, he just took his research and disappeared. They said it was too horrible what they were doing. And he refuses to give Edward anything and tells him to please leave. And Edward does. The doctor tells him, doctor? Yeah, he's a doctor. You can't, what's that scene? You can't handle the truth?
Answers. I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
I should put it in here. And once you learn that, it's hell, and Edward yells, I've already seen hell. He has, believe me, I think he has. So then they leave, but then the doctor changes his mind, goes over to Edward and gives him an envelope of where his research is, and tells him that, to watch for the truth that's hidden within the truth, and that, will you be able to handle it? So then they leave, and unfortunately Lust goes to see the doctor as well, and he refuses to tell her where his research is. And but then a little girl goes to see the doctor, and she threatens to kill her if he doesn't tell her, and so he does. Then after Edward gets his arm fixed, which takes 3 days, and he goes, the research is in this massive library in this one section, which is a brilliant place to hide it, because then hide a tree in the forest basically. So Edward gets there and is completely devastated because the whole thing's been burned. Now Lust wasn't going to sift through all of it, so she just burned the whole building down. Luckily just that section. And Edward, is completely depressed, and so is Alphason. But then the librarian lady they approached tells him, we had this woman working here, this young woman. She might know something. You can go see her. And so he does. Together they go see her with these two, one commander, like to be a man and a woman from the army. They keep escorting them. So they go see her, And she's this, like, super bookworm to a point where she can't really keep a job because she just keeps reading. And then she tells them all, I'm sorry, all of his notes have been there. And that section's been burned off. And again, they're like, and they want to leave. And then she tells them, wait, I have a photographic memory. And I read all of the doctor's notes. I can just, transcript them for you. And Edward and Alphys are like, seriously? So after 5 days, she does just that. And Edward, now this girl, she really wants to earn money to put her mother in a better hospital. And Edward has a research fund, and he basically writes her not a check, but he tells one of the army lady, here, go use my pin, use this, and give her this amount of money. And they're, fucking shocked. So they take it's a lot of fucking papers, and it's Dr. Monarch's cookbook. Now, it's not really a cookbook, it's just alchemists write things in code in order to make sure that other people can read their notes. So they go to a library and start to try to decipher the code. Of course, it's very difficult. After a few days, the young chick comes to see them, and she wants to thank Edward again, for the money. She was able to put her mom in a much better hospital. And she's like, how's the research going? And they're upset. And then they ask, how is finding a job going? And she's also upset. Okay, and then suddenly bursts in this other general from Central City. This is where they are right now. And he tells them, I've just come to say hello. I'm on a break. I just forgot his name. I'm not going to look. And he, because of the whole building burning down and there was all this information, all work has been slowed down because they also still have to work and close the case of that doctor that made chimeras. That also needs to be closed. And then the woman says, I've read all of those and I have photographic memory. And our general's like, perfect! You're gonna come work for us. Come on, we'll sign you in. And he grabs her and drags her away. And she's so thankful again to Ed and Alphys. So that whole burning thing down actually worked out well. In a way, at least for her. And that's it. Then Edward's like, well, okay, we better start, working on deciphering this code. Because, Alphys tells the woman, maybe your passion is a talent in itself. Well, then I think a few more days, it's the end of the day, the library's about to close, the man and woman from the military, they want to go in and call Edward and Alphys, and it's time to go. And then they hear a racket, and they go in, what's wrong, are you two fighting? And Alphys says, no, that's not it. They deciphered the code, and the ingredient that you need to make a philosopher's stone is the life of a human being. And not just one, but you need a dozen of them to create a philosopher's stone. So obviously after that, Edward and Alphys are just devastated. Because in order for them to get their bodies back to normal, they have to, any decent person wouldn't be able to do such a thing. Not even one person, you need a dozen. You need to kill a dozen in order to do that. It is, wow. Holy shit. But you go back to Dr. Monarch, does that mean that he as well had to, is that how he got his stone? Holy shit. Anyway, General Armstrong comes back to see them, and talk to them. the two brothers told the military people not to, forget what they heard, so they wouldn't get in trouble from it. But they caved in when General Armstrong, he can be very intense. And so then suddenly Edward thinks, wait, the truth that's within the truth. So he asks, where did Dr. Monarch work? Oh, by the way, General Armstrong could have taken him back, but he leaves him in that town. It's like we're gonna, close an eye to that. So they look in, okay, he worked in laboratory number 3 in Central. But Edward says that after he became a state alchemist, he went there and he didn't see anything there that, that could have been related to this. But then there's another lab number 5 has been closed down. And then Edward notices that it's right next to a prison, which it's like, bingo. This is the lab they need. Because they would have needed sacrifices, and what better place to get them than the prison? Because there was also many on death row. You pretend that they've been hung, because, as Edward says, the remains of killers and people that have been executed, the bodies aren't given back to the families. So, now General Armstrong tells them to not do anything without him. He's going to investigate this, and they both have to wait. And they're like, okay. But of course they don't wait. They sneak out of the hotel they're in and go to that laboratory. Now, the front entrance is guarded, which seems odd, doesn't it? Like, why is it guarded if it's abandoned? They get up through the wall, but the whole place is locked down. But there's a vent, which Edward climbs through. Alphason can't go with them because there's not enough room. There's one complaint of Edward's. He's 15 and he's still relatively short. And he's really upset when people mention it. Okay, he crawls through, and as he's crawling, he makes noise. And then you got, and what you have in that facility, it has 2 guards. It has 2 guards that are like Alphason. Their souls have been bounded into armors. So they're called number 48 and number 66. So number 66 used to be basically like a butcher killer. He went around and butchered people, slicing them, basically. He goes out to take care of Alphason, and seem to be able to sense who's outside. And number 48 is going to stay inside and take care of Edward. Now, Edward gets out of the vent finally. There is some light that illuminates the floor, which means that someone does go in there occasionally. And he essentially gets straight into the room where they probably performed the transmutations. So he goes in, and then number 48 appears in front of him. And so a fight ensues. Also, when Edward got his new arm, Vinery, she forgot one bolt in there, so I don't know how that's going to affect him. I think it slightly affects him in the fight. So that's interesting. It does slow him down. And outside, Alphason is facing the butcher guy, who tells him his story, and then is shocked when he realizes that Alphason is just like him as well. And Alphason learns that, but before that he's also the same. Anyway, back with Edward. He fights this guy, and then, because he already, he and Alphason trained together, so he disconnects the head from the body. And he thinks that's it, he took care of the killer. And the 48 was also a killer. It was called the Slicer. But then, surprise, surprise, the Slicer wasn't just one man. There were 2 men. They were brothers. And one was bound to the helmet and the other to the body. So, trouble for Edward. And Edward's already very weak. He lost already some blood from the fight. And, what is he going to do? The other brother's going to kill him. But then he remembers Scar and his ability, and he does the same, and manages to destroy the armor. Not fully, but most of it. And then 40 tells him, okay, finish us off, destroy us. And Ed says, I'm not going to kill you, I'm not a killer. And they both laugh because their whole life they've been treated like shit. Because they had to, they basically stole and killed to survive. And now it's ironic for them that, after all this time, after they're no longer a human, if you will, or in a human body, someone sees them as human. And number 48 says, well, for that, I'll at least give you this parting gift, Edward. And his brother tells him, they're the ones that are running all of this. What are they going to do them? They're going to destroy them. And 48 says, it doesn't matter, they're going to destroy us anyway for failing. And then just as he's about to tell him who's behind all this, Lust kills him. She has this ability to extend her fingers into these, I guess almost pointy, not knives, but make them pointy and hard. And she destroys him. And then we got another guy with her. He's called Envy. And then, Edward's shocked and he looks at them like, what the hell? And then, they say, well, Edward's here and they're going to have to take care of it. And that's it. That's where, Volume 3 ends anyway. Oh, okay. Now, again, I didn't tell you everything that happened. Yeah, exactly. Again, 3 volumes to go through. But yeah, that's what happened in these 3 volumes. Now, again, like I said, I was a bit spoiled for this. So these people are called the Brotherhood, and they're all named after sins. Now, I don't know why they're named after sins exactly, but I know there's supposed to be a brotherhood, but that's it. That's the extent of my knowledge there. And it looks like they want to also create a Philosopher's Stone. But the difference is they want to sacrifice alchemists. Not just regular people. Which begs the question, maybe Scar knows that. Maybe he knows something. Because Lust sends Gluttony to kill Scar, but he doesn't manage to. But he does, I think, injure him quite gravely. But anyway, Scar maybe knows that. Perhaps that's why he's going and killing these. Granted, maybe not, but perhaps that's one reason. Because Dr. Monarch seems to be another one they're planning to use for this. Because Lust could have just killed him, which kept him alive. So, that begs the question. Okay, so first the cover. This is a neat cover for the omnibus. You got Edward here, and there's Alferson. Miss Arakawa has a very nice art style. Okay, I'll show you some of it now. Easy. No fall. No fall. I don't know what mangas on this stand I have. They're often very thick. Okay. Let me show you. Perfect. There's Lust. Exactly. See, she's killing. In the first story, there's this Father Cornelius who has, well, not a Philosopher's Stone, but some kind of power or something. There's Edward and Alferson. So yeah, Miss Arakawa has a fantastic art style. Now, I will say there was those, moments of, the Japanese humor. But I was fine with them here. They weren't too egregious. I mean, not that they're bad, but they just take me out of the story. But here it was fine. You see, that's the little girl, Nina. She's combined with her dog, Alexander, now. That was a really tragic moment in the story. Her father, I was like, you fucking bastard. How could you? You see, there's Scar over there. There we go. That's a bit of the art. Okay, now for story. It's another one of those, I think, quite well-known manga stories that I thought I would find interesting. And I did. The art style was good, and the story was also really interesting. And they got this whole world of alchemists and these two brothers. That they had a teacher for alchemy. But she probably, killed them for the thing they attempted to bring their mother back. So I think perhaps it's one of the things that you're never permitted to do with the alchemy. It is interesting, though, from what their mother died exactly. Because I think she would have still been quite young, so I wonder if she got sick. Or I also wondered if perhaps it was suicide. Maybe. Because their husband just got up and left them alone. Maybe she was very strained from it all, concerned. Granted, I don't think so. I think it's more maybe she got sick from something and died. And then, the boys were left alone and desperate to have their mother back. And again, at that age, it kind of has to understand, but yeah, it cost them a lot, what they did. Yeah, this whole world and the concepts of it are very fascinating. Definitely something I would love to continue reading in the future. At some point, I will pick up the next one. I don't know if omnibus or just volume, but this is definitely a very cool story. The world is fascinating, the villains as well. As what are they? What do they want? Because I don't think the Brotherhood is human. I don't think the members, because Dr. Monarch uses alchemy to try to kill Lust, but then she just regenerates that part of her body he shoved a rock spike through. So I don't know what they are, but I don't think they're people. Or at least not regular ones, anyway. Whatever they are. So it's just fascinating, what is their end goal exactly with all of this? And everything else. So yeah, fantastic story. I think if you like, I guess it's not entirely, this would count as fantasy. If you like that kind of stuff, and this has really fucking cool fights as well. So if you like fights, some magic, some stuff like that, I would highly recommend this one. This is a really good read. And let me see, something else I forgot to mention. I think that's it. Yeah, this was a great one. Alright, folks, so that is it. Let me know if you've read Fullmetal Alchemist, and if so, what did you think? And that is it. Remember, collect what you're passionate about, and share it on YouTube. Bye!